Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I've had several comments already about my coat and tie. What do you all think? See, it is possible to put lipstick on a pig. Good evening. My name is Mike Robbins, and I'm a very mild alcoholic. My home group is the imaginatively named Biloxi Group in Biloxi, Mississippi. And my sponsor's name is Jim. And Jim's not here tonight, and for that I am truly grateful. Now, Jim means the world to me, but my story is always a lot more interesting when he's not around. I want to thank you all very, very, very much, because my wife and I, we got here yesterday, and we have been treated with kindness, we have been treated with respect, we have been treated with acceptance. We've been treated with warmth. We've been made to feel welcome. And you people have been doing that for us from the very first day I ever went to AA. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And it's an honor to be here for the 27th annual Mississippi Old Timers Roundup. And y'all have been doing it long enough where it's clear that you know how to do it. This has been a wonderful convention. I've heard things from the podium, and I've heard things in the halls. I've heard the words sponsorship. I've heard the words step work. I've heard the words home group. I've heard the words commitment. I've heard the words service over and over and over again since I've been here. It's very clear that you've got the kind of AA that I want a piece of. You all do it right here. And this has been just a wonderful experience. Thank you for having us. You'll find as I go on that I don't spend too much time with what it was like. And the reason being that I have a lot of other ground that I want to cover, but also because what it was like for me was what it was like for you. I've never had to explain what it was like to anyone else in Alcoholics Anonymous. They already know. You know, at first I drank because it was fun. I enjoyed it. And then I drank because it was habit, part of the lifestyle. And then I drank because I had to. I had to drink. And then I came into AA because I had to. And then I was in AA because it was part of the lifestyle, a habit. And now I come to AA because I enjoy it. It's fun. So I've come full circle. And that's one of the very, very many unexpected results of having been in AA and having been sober. So many things are so much better than I could ever have possibly dreamed of. I guess I should share with you that I'm a doctor. I'm a physician. I practice internal medicine. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically pediatrics for adults. And I guess I should share with you that during my drinking career, I used substances other than alcohol. But I want you to know that I weren't no junkie. No, sir. No, no, no. In fact, that's so important, I'm going to say it again. I weren't no junkie. I didn't use drugs. I used pharmaceuticals. And those pharmaceuticals were prescribed, dispensed, and administered by a highly trained, fully qualified, licensed medical health professional. So I weren't no junkie. Except that I was. Except that I was. But ultimately, it was alcohol that broke me. And alcohol broke me in about as many ways as I think a human being can be broken. Which raises sort of an interesting question. It's an obvious question, and it's only been recently that actually I had the answer to. I mean, it's not a terribly important question. I didn't need to know the answer to get sober. I didn't need to know the answer to stay sober, but still it would come up. And that question was, why did I drink? Why did I drink the way that I drank? From the very beginning, I did not drink like my peers. I did not drink for the reason my peers appeared to drink. And later on, there were the inevitable consequences. And even I figured out at some point that the stuff that was happening had something to do with my drinking. So why did I drink the way that I did? And of course, in the rooms, we're given two answers. The first, I'm an alcoholic. Dogs bark because that's what dogs do. Alcoholics drink because that's what alcoholics do. And I have no quarrel with that. That's true. The second reason we're given in the rooms is I drank for the effect. And I've got no quarrel with that either. That's perfectly true. But somehow it just didn't seem complete. It didn't seem like that was the whole explanation. And then not long ago, I heard another fella giving his story, and he nailed it for me. He nailed it. And what he said was, I didn't drink because I enjoyed being intoxicated. I drank because I really, really did not like being sober. And the gongs went off. That was it. That's why I drank. I did not like anything about being sober. I didn't like the way it felt. This dealing with life on life's terms things is highly overrated. Alcohol was never my problem. Never. Alcohol was my solution. And a fine and effective solution it was. It worked wonderfully well. And to this day, I am convinced that I would not have accomplished many of the things that I accomplished in my life without a solution as effective as alcohol was. It worked, and it worked well. But my solution became my problem. And then I had no solution. And that's about the best definition of the bottom that I've ever heard. When my solution becomes my problem and I have no solution, that's the bottom. That's the end. And the end is where I'm going to begin my story. I'm going to begin at the end. Do you remember the end for you? Oh, not what was going on, but how it felt at the end. I think everybody here has either experienced or watched someone else experience the end. Do you remember how it felt? I'd like you to imagine me. I'm sitting on a curb. It's cold and it's dark. And I'm sitting in front of a ratty-ass building in a ratty-ass part of a town that is not my home. And what I'm doing, in my coat pocket, I have a small bottle of vodka. And I'm taking that bottle out, and I'm unscrewing the top, and I'm tipping it back, and I'm trying to swallow, but it won't go down. I've been drinking for days. I'm saturated with alcohol, and I just can't force down another drop. And so I drool what's in my mouth back into the bottle because I don't want to waste any. I put the top back on the bottle. I put it back in my coat pocket, and I sit on that curb, and I take out the bottle, and I unscrew the top, and I tip it back and pour it into my mouth, and I cannot get it down. But I can't stop trying. I can't stop trying. It's not working anymore. I'm not the least bit intoxicated. I'm bleeding alcohol, but my mind was as clear at that moment as it is right now. It's not working anymore. And I can't stop trying. And at this point, I've been in AA for almost 20 years. Now, during that 20 years, I didn't drink most of that time. During that time, I drank maybe a year total. I went to meetings. I went to thousands of meetings. I participated. I got a sponsor. I worked the steps to the best of my ability. I had a home group. I did service work. I did the deal. I did the deal. And it worked for me. Just like it works for you. For a while. For a while. And then it was like there was a tiny, tiny leak in an inner tube. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the air would leak out, and I would begin to hurt. And I'd start waking up in the morning with this knot in my stomach for no reason. And I'd go to bed at night going, thank God this day is over. In sobriety. Ain't it great to be sober? And I knew it was happening. So I'd go to more meetings. I'd talk about it. I'd talk to my sponsor. I'd throw myself. I'd do more step work, more and more meetings. And the longer I stayed sober, the worse it got. Oh, ever so slowly. But eventually, it would get to the point where even the idea of a few moments of relief from the way that sobriety felt, I would drink. I've never relapsed by accident. I knew that once I started, I wouldn't be able to stop. I knew that once I started, that firestorm of consequences would descend upon me and everybody that I cared about and cared about me. I knew that would happen. But the idea of putting up with one more day of what sobriety was like, I didn't care. I didn't care. And I drank. And what would happen is I'd go to treatment and I'd come out of treatment and I'd be all pumped up and I'd throw myself back into AA. And I would do the deal. I would do it exactly the way you people talk about doing it. And it would work again for a while. And then the cycle would start over. And I did that over and over and over again. Now, you won't admit this, but I know that you do it. You go into your groups and you nudge your neighbor and you point across the room and you say, she doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. I didn't get it. And by this time, I knew what it was that I didn't get. And it was what Bill Wilson called the spiritual angle. And I knew I didn't get that. See, I didn't grow up in a religious home. I didn't have any religious training as a child. My parents weren't for religion. They weren't against it. We didn't talk about banana prices in Brazil at the dinner table because we didn't care. We didn't talk about God for exactly the same reason. And one day when I was little, I remember asking my dad, I said, Dad, how come we don't go to church like my friends? And what he said was, well, son, religion is fine for those who need it. But you see, it's kind of a crutch. That's all he said. That's all he needed to say. Because from that moment on, no one was ever, ever, ever going to see me as a cripple. I could do the mechanics of AA as well as anybody, but I couldn't do that. I'm going to tell you a joke that might illustrate to you what it felt like for me in AA when this spiritual stuff would come up. Spiritual toolkits, prayer, and meditation. It's a funny joke. You're going to want to go home and tell your friends. So, pay attention. I'll even tell you what the joke's about. It's about a drunken termite. Okay? Drunken termite. A drunken termite goes staggering through the streets. He goes up to the local tavern and barges through the door, wanders into the middle of the room, and bangs his hand down on the table and then yells, "Where's the bartender?" How do you feel right now? Because the joke is over. You sort of feel like, ooh, shit, I think I just missed something. Are you feeling just a little bit embarrassed because there was one or two people way over there who laughed? They got the joke. Are you feeling just a little bit stupid and therefore hostile toward the guy who just made you feel stupid? That's how I felt in AA. Oh, I'll explain the joke. Termites. Termites eat wood. The termite went into the establishment and asked, "Where is the bar, the slab of wood that they rest the drinks on, tender and tasty to eat? Where is the bar tender?" Do I need to explain it again? Now it's funny. Because now you have the perspective of a termite. I was not a termite. You guys were talking about prayer and meditation and spiritual toolkit. I heard what you said, but I didn't get the joke. You told me I had spiritual problems. Oh, pfft. I had real problems. I couldn't stop drinking. I had wife problems. I had money problems. I had kid problems. I had job problems. I had professional problems. I had real problems. I'm going to tell you another story. This one's easier. All right? I'm walking down the side of a road just minding my own business, and around the corner comes a speeding Mustang, and it's going way too fast, and it skids out of control and clips me. Over the hood, over the top, bang on the trunk, into the gutter I go. Boom! Ah! I'm busted. I'm busted up. I can't see straight. I can't hardly breathe. I've got this little geyser of red stuff coming out of my chest. I'm hurt so badly I cannot help myself. And along comes the ambulance, and they scoop me up, and they take me to the local hospital, and they wheel me into the emergency room, and from there they take me to the trauma room, and the nurses are scurrying around, and they're putting in tubes and wires, and they're shooting x-rays. It's just a madhouse. They're all scurrying around trying to save my life, and it's just crazy. They're going, and into the midst of all this walks the trauma surgeon. And he looks confident. He is a man who knows his business. Here's the guy who's going to save my life. And the crowd parts, and he walks up to me, and he leans over and whispers in my ear, "Mike, I can save you, but first, you must believe with all your heart in the Easter Bunny." That's what I heard. That's what I heard in AA. The Easter Bunny is going to fix my spiritual problems. Oh, I don't think so. Just tell me how many meetings I need to go to, what kind of books I'm supposed to read. No problem, I can do that. But don't ask me to do that. And so that ratty-ass building that I'm sitting in front of is about to become my 5th long-term treatment center in the space of 20 years. And if you don't believe anything else that I say tonight, please believe this: I had no hope. Because that which helps us, the only thing that helps us, didn't help me. And I had done the deal. And I knew what would happen is I would go through treatment and I would do fine. I would come out into AA and I would do fine for a while. And then the cycle would start again. The best I could hope for, was exist through a life like fingernails on a chalkboard and just try to hold on. And quite frankly, I'd rather die. I've already been to 4 of the best that professional treatment has to offer in this country. And I knew I was wasting their time and my time. And I'll tell you something about treatment for doctors. Oh, doctors, they don't get to go to SISSI 14 or 28-day treatment centers. No. The people who do treatment, they have peculiar ideas about treating doctors. They think treating doctors is more difficult than treating most other people. They think doctors have control issues. They think doctors often confuse themselves with God. They even have a name for it. They call it M-deity. So I was going to be there for a while. Well, I'd been there for about a month, and I was feeling some physically better, but not much. So I went up to the guy who was running the outfit, and I said, "Hey, man, you've lied to me." And he said, "Oh, what did I lie about?" I said, "You told me that it would get better. I've been here for a month. And it ain't gotten any better. Oh, I feel a little physically better. But my wife still hates me. My kids still don't want to see me. I'll never be allowed to practice medicine again. I can't afford to pay for this wonderful establishment you got me stuck into." What's gotten better? And he said, "Well, tell me something." He said, "When was the last time that things got worse for you?" I had to think about that. And the truth was that things had not gotten worse since I arrived. They hadn't gotten any better, but they hadn't gotten any worse. And he said, "Don't you think not going backwards is a big step forward?" I said, "Well, yeah." And he says, "What have you been doing since you've been here?" I said, "I've been doing the same thing I've done at every other treatment center I've ever been to. I've been going to these dumb groups. I've been saying the right things, a couple little tears, emotional breakthrough, he's fine, they get off my ass, all these things, all the wonderful things that happen in treatment." He said, "The only thing I'm doing different is I'm telling the truth this time, which is you can't help me." And he said, "So you've been telling the truth?" And I said, "Yes, to the best of my ability, I've been telling the truth." And he says, "Isn't it interesting that honesty as a tool will take a situation that's sliding downhill and immediately stop that downward spiral?" He said, "Being honest in a situation usually won't make that situation worse, but it will always, always stop the downward slide." And he says, "Isn't it also interesting that the principle of the first step is honesty. We admitted we were alcoholic and that our lives had become unmanageable. That's a simple statement of honesty. And when I come into the program and I make that statement, oh, it doesn't fix my alcoholism, but things stop getting worse. Now, I'd been in AA for a long time, and I'd been in thousands of discussions about honesty. I mean, I've led the discussions on honesty and participated in all, but I had never considered honesty as a tool quite that way. That was something new. And about that same time, I was in one of those dumb little groups that they have in treatment centers. And the guy who was running it that day, he read a line that he claimed came from the 12 and 12. And what he said was, AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily, usefully whole. And I raised my hand, and I said, that is not in the 12 and 12. And he said, yes, it is. I said, no, it's not. He said, yes, it is. No, it's not. I've read that book. I've read it 100 times. I can quote it backwards. It is not in that book. Yes, it is. No, it's not. It is. But it's in the foreword. Nobody reads the foreword. So I was right. And we had some discussion about that, too. But like the other guy, he mentioned this principles thing. Now again, I've been in AA for a long time. I've talked about principles this, principles that, principles before personalities, principles of the program, practicing the principles. But all of a sudden it occurred to me, for the very first time, I didn't know what they were. What are the principles? Are they the same thing as the steps? Or if they're not, how are they different? Are they related? I didn't know anybody else who knew what the principles were either. I knew lots of people who talked about them. But if I went up and asked, what are the principles? Blah, 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 blah. I didn't know. You need to understand that at this point, I didn't give a rat's butt about anything. I was still looking forward to waking up tomorrow dead. I had nothing in my life to look forward to. I had done the deal and it didn't work. I didn't give a rat's butt. And why? I got interested in that little question, what are the principles? To this day, I don't know why that little spark was there. And so I started going around saying, you know, okay, honesty is the principle of the first step. What about, you know, what are the principles? And eventually I came across a guy, and he told me, he said, the principle of the second step is hope, and the principle of the third step is faith. And I said, time out. Termite, time out. There are three words that these people on AA just seem to fling around, and they use them interchangeably. Belief and hope and faith. I go to somebody and ask them, what does it mean if I believe? And they say, it means you got faith. And then I go to another person and I say, well, what does it mean if I got faith? And they say, it means you believe. Now, I was still terribly toxic, but I know circular logic when I heard it. And And that didn't seem very helpful to me. Second step, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Third step, made a decision to turn our life, our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Hope and faith? Give me a break. And he said, it's a progression. One thing leads to the next, which leads to the next. He says, if you say that you did something and you got a result, and I hear you say it, and I don't think you're a pathological liar, I believe you. I'm not involved. I didn't do it. I didn't get the results. I don't care. But I believe that you did something and you got a result. Okay. But if you say that you did that thing in such a way that I start thinking, well, maybe I can do that too, you have just given me something that I didn't have before. Hope. I go to you and I say, I can't stay sober. You tell me that you got up this morning, you read a couple little lines in a little book that you call a big book, kind of dumb, that you spent an hour with a group of other people trying to do the same thing that you were doing, that you talked to another person in the afternoon who was trying to do the same thing that you were trying to do, and you said, something like, thank you before you went to bed, and you managed to stay sober that day. Well, maybe I'll start thinking, that doesn't sound so hard. Maybe I can do that too. I haven't done it. I haven't experienced the results, but I'm beginning to get involved. But then if I do what you say you did, and I experience the same result for myself, and then I do it again and I get the same result, and I do it a third time and get the same result, I do it 10 times and I keep getting the same result, pretty soon I'm going to know before I do it the 12th time that I'm going to get the same results. That's faith. You tell me you did something and you got a result, belief. You tell me you did something in such a way that I start thinking, well, maybe I can do that too. You have not only done it, but you have given something to me that I didn't have before. And then if I do what you say you did, often enough, and it keeps working, pretty soon I'm going to know it works before I even try. Faith. Hope and belief. Even Easter Bunny me can do that. You mean I don't have to do this churchy stuff? Maybe not. If somebody like me can do belief and hope and faith, maybe something would change. Hope. The second step teaches me. Second step simply says, maybe something could change. Third step says, I'm making a decision to do what you have done and experience the results for myself. Hope. Faith, belief. Even I can do that. And that was a revelation. That sounded like termite to me, but as soon as they explained it, I can do that. And the cool thing is, I always thought that I either had hope or faith or I didn't. But they're telling me I can create it. Any problem that I face today, any problem that's eating my lunch because I don't know how to deal with it, all I need to do is to go to you and say, have you ever experienced anything like that before? And then I ask you, what did you do? See, I'm very careful not to ask you, what do you think I should do? Because I'm not going to listen to that crap, even if I asked. I'm just built that way. I'm not going to hear that. But I will hear if you tell me what you did. You've experienced something that I'm trying to solve. What did you do? And if you tell me what you did in such a way that I think, well, maybe I could do that, you have given me hope. You haven't changed my outcome. Nothing has happened, but I'm beginning to get involved. It's changing how I feel. And then if I do what you say you did and experience the result for myself, that's the beginning of my faith. And if I keep doing it and it keeps working, eventually I'm going to know that it's going to work tomorrow before tomorrow even gets here. What more rock-solid kind of faith could you possibly ask for? And I can do that. My God, I can do that. Through my actions, I can create, strengthen, nurture hope. Through my actions, I can create, strengthen faith to whatever degree I need to. I can ask you how you dealt with that problem. I can find you and say, well, what did you do with that problem? I can go around and get as much hope as I need. And then I make a decision to do what you did and see if I get the same results. And if I do, I keep doing it until I know it's going to work. And then I'm not afraid of it tomorrow. Is that remarkable or what? Oh, tell me more. This is all right. I like this. This'll do. I've been around for a long time. I'd heard it all, but I haven't heard that. Fourth step. Continue to take personal inventory. No. No. The personal inventory. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you say. The only people I know who think that the fourth step is clear and straightforward are people who have already done a fourth step. The instructions are not clear. It is not Bill Wilson's shining literary moment. He gives a little bit of instruction, and he talks a bunch of other stuff. He gives a little bit of instruction and a bunch of other stuff. He talks about 4 columns, but only shows 3. And I've peeked ahead. I know I'm going to have to tell somebody else this stuff. You know, admitting to God, well, presumably he's omniscient. Admitting to myself, it's my list, you know. I was there. So the clinker is, I'm going to have to tell someone else, and I don't want to do that. The instructions are not clear. I'm having to dig around in stuff I'd much rather not dig around in. The fourth step is all about fear. Those of you who have done one, what kept it? What made it so hard? Fear. But the fourth step teaches me something. It teaches me a skill. If I complete the last line on my fourth step, I've learned how to do something, which is to transform fear, that which I'm ashamed of, into courage, something I can be justly proud of. Because what courage is being afraid and managing to do the next right thing anyway. People don't get medals for courage because they were fearless. People get medals for courage because they were scared witless. And they did the next right thing anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the presence of fear and the ability to do the next right thing anyway, by which I can transform fear, which I'm ashamed of, into courage, which I don't mind telling you about. I don't like going into my groups going, oh, I've been afraid all day, which is almost always the case. But I don't mind going into my groups going, I've been courageous several times today. Same fear. One I don't mind you knowing about because I've transformed it. The principle of the fourth step is courage. It teaches me the skill of being able to transform fear into courage. I learn how to do the next right thing in the face of that fear. That seems to me to be a reasonably useful skill to have for someone who's fear-based. That was cool. Step 5, admitting all this stuff. That's about integrity. Completing step 5 teaches me a skill, which is integrity, the ability to tell the truth about myself into the ears of another person. Might that be useful in my daily life? Think relationships. Wouldn't the ability to tell the truth about myself into someone else's ears come in handy from time to time? Completing the 5th step teaches me a skill that will help me solve my daily problems. And about this time, they gave me a very, very interesting idea. And what they said was, is it possible that spirituality is simply doing something that changes how I feel? For example, if I'm honest in a situation, I feel one way. If I'm not honest in that same situation, I feel a different way entirely. That's not theory. That's not metaphysical. I have experienced that. That's real. If I go into a situation thinking, this sucks, it's always going to suck, in fact, it's going to get worse, I feel one way. If I go into that same situation going, this sucks, but it might get better, I feel another way entirely. Hope changes how I feel. Again, I have experienced that. That's not theory. Faith, knowing that what I'm going to do is going to lead to a certain outcome that I want versus wondering if I'm going to screw this up again. Faith changes how I feel. Being afraid and sitting there cowering under my covers makes me feel one way. Being afraid and managing to do the next right thing makes me feel another way entirely. Courage changes how I feel. One way makes me feel more comfortable than the other. Maybe spirituality is simply doing something that changes how I feel. Now, isn't that an interesting idea? Because once again, I can do that. Even Easter Bunny, godless me, I can do that. And I said, this is getting better and better and better. Tell me more. And then I ran into a major roadblock. Step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And You might think the roadblock was the God word, but actually that was not the case. The roadblock for me was the word entirely. That was a serious dead end. Okay? Let's say I go to my doctor just for a checkup. He does a chest x-ray. He notices there's a little spot there. He checks it out and he says, Mike, you got this tiny little cancer in one of the lungs. It's very small, very localized. All we have to do is just do a little minor surgery. We take that sucker out and you'll be fine. Now, I think that's a good idea, but am I entirely ready to have it done? Oh, it might hurt. They might get in there and find things are a lot more extensive than the tests seem to show. The surgeon who's going to do the surgery, he might be one of us who really needs to be one of us. There might be post-op complications. The outcome is uncertain. Am I entirely ready? No. And there's something else. It's similar, but it's not the same thing. I'm going to tell you another story. Let's say I've got this nice yard. I love my yard. I take care of my yard. I fertilize my yard. I water my yard. I take care of landscape. Oh, it's just a gorgeous yard. Nicest yard in the whole community. I mean, it's as close to just perfection as it could possibly be. I love my yard. And over here, I've got a neighbor. He's got a dog. Oh, it's not a dog. It's one of those mutated giraffes. Big goddamn thing. Big thing. He gets out one day, comes over into the middle of my nice yard, squats down, and takes his enormous doggy dump. 6 feet high. It does not belong there. I become restless, irritable, and discontented, followed by red rage. It doesn't belong there. It looks bad. It smells bad. I want it gone. I'm entirely ready to have that gone. I want it gone now. I don't like the doggy dump. I don't like the doggy who did the doggy dump. I don't like the son of a bitch who owns the dog who did the doggy dump. I don't like the woman who married the son of a bitch who owns the dog who did the doggy dump. I want it gone. I want it gone now. I've got another neighbor over here. He notices the ruckus. He comes over. He says, Mike, I could not help but admire this fine monument in the middle of your nice yard. He says, look, I've got a garden. I can use it for fertilizer. Why don't you give it to me? And I say, I'm sorry, that's mine. I'm not entirely sure why I do that. But the fact of the matter seems to be that I don't want you taking any of my stuff, even if I don't want it. So am I entirely ready? Oh, we think not. But I had to be entirely ready. I can't stay sober. I need to do something. And I need to be entirely ready. But I'm not. And they changed my life. They changed my life with a blank piece of paper like this one. And what they did was what I'm doing now, just tearing a hole in the middle of the piece of paper. And they held it up and they said, Mike, where is the defect? We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Where is the defect? And I said, that's a stupid-ass question. It's right there. And they said, Mike, what makes that a defect? Is that a defect because there's something there that needs to be surgically removed? Or is that a defect because there's something that's supposed to be there that's missing? Maybe my defect is not something that I need to have less of. Maybe my defects are something that I need more of. Maybe my defect is not that I'm a liar. Maybe my defect is that I don't have enough honesty. Maybe my defect is not that I go around thinking the world is going to end tomorrow. Maybe my defect is that I don't have enough hope. Maybe my defect is not that I'm afraid all of the time. Maybe my defect is that I don't know enough about faith and courage. Maybe my defect is not that I'm alone in the world. Maybe my defect is that I don't know enough about integrity. Maybe my defects are things that I don't have enough of. Maybe what I need to be entirely ready for is to be given more. And that changed my life, because I could be entirely ready to be given more. Give me more honesty, give me more hope, give me more faith, give me more courage, give me more integrity. And now, step 6, give me more willingness, the ability to become willing in a situation where ordinarily I would not. Maybe what I need to ask for is more. And I put out my hands, and for the first time in my life, I said a prayer that I meant. And I said, please, if there is a God, please give me more. I have been working so hard, and I have been hurting so long, and I have been trying so hard, and I am so tired. Please give me more. Please. Seventh step, humility. And not humility as in small in the face of something great. Humility as it's defined in the 12 and 12, and it is in there this time, where it says, for me, true humility, the alcoholic, is a clear recognition of who and what I really am, followed by a sincere attempt to become all I could be. Let my job be to start filling in the holes. I know what my holes are. I did a 4th and 5th step. Now I need to start doing something to fill them in. You hear about people in the rooms, they talk about that hole inside. You ever heard that? That hole inside? If the hole is filled, the defect is removed. And they told me it was like I was a little can of red paint. Red is bad. Don't want to be red. Yellow's good. Want to be yellow. But I'm not yellow. I'm red. Wish I may, wish I might. I'm not yellow, I'm red. Want to be yellow, but I'm red. But if I could find a way today to make one tiny little drop of yellow stuff and drop it into my little can of red paint. Mix it up good. What's going to happen? Nothing. Still red. And if tomorrow I put another drop of yellow stuff in my little can of red paint, what's going to happen? Nothing. But if I do it 3 days in a row, 7 days in a row, 30 days in a row, let's say I can do it every day for 6 months, and I put one drop of yellow stuff in my can of red paint, what's going to happen? Well, I'm not going to be yellow, but I ain't going to be red no more. Orange. Orange is not yellow, but orange is not red. There is a transformation coming. If I tell the truth today in a situation where ordinarily I might not, there is a drop of yellow. It may not make any difference today, but if I do it again tomorrow and the next day, eventually it will. And the neat thing is, if I keep doing it every single day, one little drop of yellow, one little drop of yellow, and I keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, eventually I'm going to be indistinguishable from yellow. But even at that point, there is going to be just as much red as there ever was, which means I can be what I am and still be in good recovery at the same time. I can stop pretending. That was so cool. I can do that. I can do that. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And they told me the principle of that step, what it taught me, was love. And I said, well, I can understand part of that, because there is a group of people who I did harm, and I do want to repair those relationships. I do want to show them that I am genuinely remorseful for having done that to them. I do want to compensate them. I want to repay them for what I stole. However, there's a second group of people, much larger than the first, who deserved what I did to them. And given the chance, I would do it to them again. I don't love them. And they said, Mike, how much do you love yourself? How much is it worth to you to get those people out of your head? How much is it worth to you to be able to walk down the street and see one of those people coming your way and not feel like ducking into the nearest doorway? How much is it worth to you to be able to sit in the same room with one of those people and not have to get up and go to the bathroom and never come back? How much do you love yourself? And they gave me a wonderful definition for love. And they told me, they said, Mike, you love somebody if you're willing to wash their dirty socks. Now, that's not particularly romantic, but it does lend clarity. For example, cute young thing, blue eyes, blonde, tight halter top, short shorts, walking my way. I think, am I in love? Well, I'm not actually all that interested in washing her dirty socks. Clarity. I may be interested in other things, and that's fine, but there's no confusion. Clarity. I don't get along with my parents. I don't like them. They don't like me. We haven't spoken to one another for many, many years. However, if they ever need me to be there, I am willing to wash their dirty socks. I love my parents, but I don't like them. And that taught me that I don't need to love the people that I like, and I don't need to like the people that I love. There's a lot of clarity there. Great definition. Step 9, making those amends. The principle of that step is discipline. Like the Nike commercial, just do it. Now, most of y'all in here were probably told by your sponsor when you first came in, the steps are in order for a reason. Don't be going out and making amends right now. And every single one of you ignored that advice and went out and did it anyway. I did. Every person I've ever sponsored has ignored me and gone out and tried to make the amends. And usually it doesn't work all that well. You know, this question about are the steps actually in order for a reason? I hear people say that all the time. However, if you ask them, what reason? Good luck on the answer. If you look at it from the point of view of the steps, it doesn't make much sense. However, if you look at it from the point of view of principles, look at what you have by the time you get to step 9. Honesty, that might be useful. Hope, oh God, I hope this comes out. Faith, that dumb sponsor, he's asked me to do a lot of bizarre stuff so far, and it's worked out okay, so maybe I'll do this again. It surely needs courage. It needs integrity, the ability to tell the truth about myself into the ears of another person. It certainly needs willingness, because I don't want to do it. It needs humility. It needs love. I either need to love them or love me, one or the other. And you stack all of those things one on top of the other, I finally have the ability to make effective amends. Maybe the steps actually are in order for a reason. Another revelation to me. That makes sense. I can do that. I can do that. Step 10. Continue to take personal inventory. And when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. And I said, there's nothing new there. I learned about doing the inventory in 4 and 5, and I learned about making the amends before I got here. What's the big deal about this one? And they told me that the principle of this step, step 10, was perseverance. They said, don't stop doing what works. Now, I'd gotten very, very good about digging myself out of holes. I'd work like the devil to get things back and make things right, and I'd work and work and work, and I'd gotten very, very good at it. And as soon as I did, the pain would recede, and the motivation caused by the pain would recede as well. So the ability to keep doing that which works for me was something that I truly did need to know more about. Perseverance. Step 11. Oops. Well, we had a good run here, but I guess we're just going to have to do it with 10 steps, because step 11 is pure, unadulterated, dripping termite. Listen to it. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power. I can't do that. And they told me, fake it till you make it. And I said, I can act like I got 3 arms. I can even go around and wear a shirt that's got a 3rd armhole right here. And I can walk around like this all day. But at the end of the day, I know there's only 2. Fake it till you make it does not work for me. Now, that's not to say that it hasn't been useful for many, many, many people who have come into AA, but it doesn't work for me. I said, I can't do this. Now, we need to back up slightly. Right after I got to this place, they asked me to start doing something that had 3 parts. It was a task that had 3 parts. First thing, in the morning, I had to ask, never mind to who, but I had to ask either with my mouth or in my brain, but I had to say it in some way, shape, or form. Help me find one neat thing. The second part of the task was I had to make it my business to look for that neat thing until I found it. Third part of the task was, at the end of the day, I needed to remember what the one neat thing was, and then say thank you, never mind to who. 3 things. Sounds easy. Try it. Oh, you'll be able to go home for a couple days and be able to do all 3 things just to show that guy up on the podium, by God, I can do that. But try to put it together consistently over a period of time. It is hard. It took practice. It took me a long time before I could consistently do those 3 things. And I started eventually being able to notice things that, it was neat. Something was neat. Didn't have to be a big thing. But I'd gotten to the point where I was doing it most of these days. So now we're back here, and I can't do step 11. And so they started asking me a couple questions. They said, Mike, what's prayer? And I said, it's talking to God. And they said, well, yeah, that's one form of prayer. But in the more general form, prayer is simply an asking. In Old English, some of you may remember reading some of that stuff in high school. The word prithee, I pray to thee. That word became please in modern English. A prayer is simply an asking. And I can do that. Then they said, what's meditation? I said, it's sitting cross-legged on the floor with your arms out like this, going, I feel stupid. And they said, well, that's certainly one form of meditation. But again, in the general form, meditation is simply raising awareness to the point where I'm starting to notice things that ordinarily would pass me by. In formal meditation, almost always it begins with breathing. Breathing is a natural function that usually I'm not even aware of. But if I focus, I can become aware of my breathing. I can change it. I can influence it. But unless I become aware, unless I consciously try to become aware, it just passes me by. So meditation is simply raising my awareness to the point where I'm noticing things that ordinarily would pass me by. That's all it is. And they said, okay, let's look at the one neat thing. Please help me find one neat thing. Mike, that's a prayer. Okay. What about the meditation? And they said, well, when you make it your business to look for something in the day until you find it, then you're raising your awareness. The fact that you're able to find the one neat thing where ordinarily it would pass you by means that you've been meditating all this time. And I said, well, that's the end of that. They said, oh, no. They said, what about the conscious contact? And I said, what about the conscious contact? And they said, even if you don't believe in a God, whether you do or whether you don't, I think everybody here could agree that if there was a God, that the ultimate presentation of that God would be the day. The sky, the wind, the grass, the flowers, the day. The day would be the ultimate presentation of the God. And so anything that I do that makes me notice something in the day that ordinarily would pass me by is conscious contact. The one neat thing. Please help me find one neat thing. The asking, the meditation, the raising of awareness, and the conscious contact. Noticing something in the day that ordinarily would pass me by. I had been doing the 11th step for months. The buggers tricked me. 12th step, service. I'm sorry, the principle of step 11 is awareness of things outside myself. Step 12, service. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result, not a result, the result. The whole point of these steps. We tried to carry the message, this message. What message? Well, there's as many messages as there are people who carry them. For me, it's simply the phrase, there is a solution. Can't stop drinking, there's a solution. Can't stop feeling ashamed, afraid, lonely. There's a solution for that too. And practice these principles in all our affairs. Now I know what they are. And I can do all of them. Honesty, hope, faith, courage, integrity, willingness, love, discipline, perseverance, awareness, and now service. I can do all of those things. I can do every single one of those things. I go to a lot of meetings, but I did that before. I have a sponsor, I sponsor other people. I did that before. I read the books, I participate. I do service work. I did all of those things before. But now I also practice a very crude, very childlike, very, very simple, concrete form of spirituality. I perform actions that change how I feel, that make me more comfortable, which is what alcohol did for me when it was working, and this way has far fewer side effects. I'm very, very grateful to finally be a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous and the spiritual program that it is. Because of that, all things are possible. All is well today. And when I stopped trying to not drink and started working on these things, I haven't had the breath, not the whisper of the obsession to drink or to hurt myself in any other way. And I don't mind being sober anymore. Ain't it great to be sober? Thank you and good night.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.